Welcome back to the Hardware Unboxed podcast for episode 98. We promised at some point in a previous episode that we'd be talking about AI as two people that don't know tons about AI, that have claimed to do a small amount of research and have sort of used some of these tools. Look, this is our AI episode. We're going to be talking about our experiences using some of the AI tools on the market at the moment, our sort of interpretation of what's currently going on, some of the financial concerns with the companies and all that sort of thing. So yeah, maybe you can either love or hate this episode, depending on whether you love or hate AI, and you can get stuck into us into the comments. But for now, let's get into it. I think this episode is probably going to be one that's going to upset a bunch of people, and then a lot of other people are going to really love, because we're talking about AI on this week's episode. And so people that are just going crazy for AI, can't get enough of it, switch off this podcast. This isn't going to be the one for you. I think we have some opinions about certain things that may upset you, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, we're going to be talking about, I guess, the current state of things, at least as far as we see it with AI, our experiences, a bit of using it, how we use it for our work, because obviously this is something that a lot of people have talked about with AI, sort of like enhancing productivity, that sort of thing. Does it actually work for us? And then, yeah, just, I guess, our overall thoughts on this whole situation that's currently making it a lot harder for you to buy PC hardware and that sort of thing. But to preface it, neither of us are experts in this field. We cover PC gaming hardware, not AI data centers. We don't look extensively into AI software, AI tools, that sort of thing. We have used a fair few of them in our work, trying to see what they can do and that sort of thing. But outside of that, we're not fully deep in this ecosystem like you'll see from some of the people that cover this sort of thing full time. So just keep that in mind as we're going through all this sort of thing. But yeah, we've done a bit of research. Sounds like, Steve, you've done a fair bit of research, or I don't know how much you want to say that you've done in terms of research. But
well, more than I would have liked to, I guess, which makes it feel like a lot, but it's probably not that deep into the research. But yeah, just trying to work a few things out. And, obviously we've got a bit more interest in it now that it's sort of destroying our favorite hobby, can't buy memory, all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've been aware of it for a while. We've been discussing it for a while. And I guess my research into it has been more, is there an AI bubble? When's it likely to burst? What are the factors at play? And, digging into it that way to find out what's going on there so we can get back to what matters, PC gaming, the important things in life.
Yeah, the PC, the hardware bubble sort of thing, the AI bubble, the inflation of prices of hardware sort of thing. It seems to be that people are either strongly in one camp or strongly in the other camp. Like, you see the sort of AI truther people is maybe the way to put it, that are sort of like, no, AI is revolutionary. This is changing the world. Like, there's not enough hardware. Like, the demand is infinite for this sort of thing. We need more and more and more. And then there's people who, I guess, are doomers, AI doomers, who are sort of looking into the pricing structures of some of these deals, the overinflation of value of some of these companies potentially, and coming to very different conclusions. Mm-hmm. So which category do you fall into? Are you a truther or more of a doomer?
I don't know if you could put me into it, because I don't know, these days everything's polarized. Like, people go to one extreme or the other. I don't really often find myself at one extreme. Like I said, I'm really just trying to understand what's going on and, what the realistic outcome is going to be. In terms of AI, I mean, my take on AI is I'm not really for or against it. I just think it's a useful tool, but so far really nothing more than that. There's obviously a lot of garbage that's been talked about it by CEOs and people hyping it up for investments. There's a lot of sort of snake oil type stuff around AI. And there's a lot of people that just hate AI for personal reasons, which, I guess fair enough. It hasn't really affected my life negatively outside of the fact that, doing our hobbies not as much fun as it once was, because, people can't actually build computers at the moment. So because AI is such a broad term now as well, it's not so much that I don't like AI. It's probably I don't like the people involved in AI, all the grifters, all the scammers, all the people telling you that, well, when I say all the people, it's really only a couple of people that that say these things and then it filters down and other people repeat it. Stuff like we heard AI was going to cure cancer by now. All these bold claims that these large language models that are being marketed as AI were going to achieve. And I remember we've talked about this before. It was, I think I'm right in saying it was 2 or 3 years ago now at Computex. And we kept running into the AI thing everywhere we went. We had lots of private meetings with, higher ups at a lot of companies that were selling hardware. And all they wanted to ask you and I about, because they saw us as experts, which is funny because we really just talk about how many frames you can get in games, but that makes us PC experts, I guess. They wanted our opinion on AI. And you and I are sort of sitting there going, well, it all seems highly speculative. We're not really seeing any real world use cases for it just yet. So this was well prior to ChatGPT.
I think it was maybe around the first release of that. I'm not 100% sure whether it was like just after or
I'm pretty confident it was just before.
Things were heating up. Yeah, not 100% sure. But I mean, I think this is maybe one of my biggest issues with AI is, and this is, I guess, true for a lot of categories, not just AI, but sort of the disconnect between the advertised capabilities and the reality of what the product actually is.
Yep.
And, you could see this even with things like GeForce GPUs and frame generation is sort of the difference. Like that annoys me, and you would have seen that in a lot of the content that we've made. And that happens a lot in our industry as well. But it seems like with AI in particular, the claims that are being made are so outlandish compared to what you see from other technologies or emerging things. And this makes me place it more into the sort of blockchain, metaverse sort of categories than it would if the claims were a bit more realistic around the product. And that's ignoring what the product actually does, because I think AI large language models have more use than something like blockchain, for example, that seems to have very few, if any, legitimate benefits.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I don't want people to sort of think we think AI is the same as blockchain. But in terms of the marketing hype, I think AI is on a very similar level to those technologies. It seems like companies are jumping onto that bandwagon, I guess, as quickly as they can. They're trying to do as much AI as they possibly can, similar to when blockchain was popular, NFTs, whatever. There was like a certain group of companies that was super interested in these technologies and so would claim that they can do so many things. And then you look at the reality of what the products can do, and there's a mismatch there. And that, to me at least, and it seems to not be an issue for some people, but to me at least, makes me lose trust in the people that are claiming these things. Because if you say one thing and then the reality is different, I'd be like, well, why would I believe you on any future things? So if you claim that AI can do things like cure cancer or whatever today, and then I use it and it's, has some issues and stuff like that, why would I believe you in 2 or 3 years from now once the technology is a bit better? You know what I mean? Like I'm going to become more skeptical over time if you keep claiming that these technologies are as revolutionary as they claim to be. So I find that very annoying. And certainly when you listen to these people like Jensen coming up on stage talking about how, AI, everything's going to be a robot or whatever, like that's all NVIDIA is doing right now. You listen to Sam Altman from OpenAI and those sort of people, and the way they speak about these products is so grating to me that I find them very difficult to listen to. Like that sort of, it's like I don't know what you think of it. It's like, it's a way that they speak. It's a way they talk and communicate these things that I'm like, I don't believe you and I don't believe what you're saying. And so I'm not going to listen to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jensen's Jensen. We've listened to Jensen essentially lie about GeForce products for years. So when we hear Jensen talk, you and I sort of see through it. Sam Altman's just insufferable. Like, I don't know why anyone buys the stuff that guy says, but I think part of it is people have sort of been primed by Hollywood for a long time to believe in like an AI fantasy. So when they see something like ChatGPT, they see more magic than what it actually is. And so they're easily misled and easily led to believe that it is magic and that it is the dawn of real AI, and this will be a sentient thing shortly. It'll be able to do all the things that are promised, and curing cancer will be nothing but a few second task for it, and it'll solve all of our problems. And I think because people have just watched so much sci-fi, especially the sort of my generation and the few generations after, have seen so much of that over the years that it's easy to accept that as like, oh, that's the reality now. We've heard about how this is happening forever, kind of like the flying cars or self-driving cars. That's been a thing that was going to happen forever and still isn't a thing. So I think that's a big part of it. But yeah, I mean, if you just take a close look at what it actually can do, and then compare that to what it's claimed that it can do, it's pretty underwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably good to talk a bit about our experiences using it, considering we're talking about what it can and can't do, because I feel like whenever I see tools like, let's say ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, these sorts of tools, they're talked about in this way that they can kind of do anything. Like you see a lot of examples, and it's not just things like coding or whatever, but it's, they can do research for you. They can craft stories for you. They can generate high quality images and videos and these sorts of things. And it's talked about all these different things that it can do. It's really a one-stop shop to help you in your life doing things. And based on my experience using these tools, I just don't think that's accurate. I feel like there's a lot of things that AI is sort of positioned to let you do that doesn't really play out in practice. Like the one major thing, I guess, is this ability to just talk to it like it's a person. Like you can ask it a question and it's supposed to work away like a worker or an agent, right? To do things for you and come back with a human-like response that is simulating like you had hired someone, hence the productivity gains, right? Instead of hiring a worker to do a task, you can use AI because it's so human-like to do things for you. But every time I get it to do these things, the output that it creates is usually wrong in some way, inaccurate, missing things, or it just doesn't really understand what I'm asking of it. And this has been the issue for me, at least, since the start of these tools. So back when ChatGPT came out for the first time, it was very bad back then, but it's maybe gotten better in some sense. But people have sort of, I guess, tried to claim that, it never hallucinates things anymore, or, the rate of getting things wrong is now significantly lower. But a lot of the time I'm asking AI to do things that are not overly difficult for a human to do, but would simplify my life if the AI could do it. So one example of this was, you might have seen recently on the Hardware Unboxed channel, I published a video looking at FSR and DLSS game support. So one of the great things that AI could potentially do, because it's supposed to have all of this knowledge, it can search the internet, has agents and stuff like that. One of the things it could theoretically do is compile these lists for me, right? Like it can find all the games that support DLSS, FSR, or whatever, cross-reference them with sources to make that list accurate, and then produce the results for me. And so I asked Gemini in its thinking mode. So just to be clear here, not the basic mode, but the thinking mode where it can go away and do more work or whatever. And it would often, because I was looking at, say, 2025 games, for example, it would often come back with a list that would include games that were not released in 2025. And to me, that is a very simple thing to get wrong. Like if I ask not even you or me or a Hardware Unboxed employee or someone, but just an everyday person, go away and find me the DLSS games released in 2025. Pretty unlikely that they would give me games released in 2024, because one of the first things you would do is check the release date of the game and not put any released in 2024 into the list. But then AI was incapable of doing that, which I see that as a very basic sort of task. And so that doesn't give me a lot of confidence in the list that it can produce. And it also doesn't give me confidence asking it questions of things that I'm not as familiar with, because I know off the top of my head, when a lot of games have been released. So a game like Indiana Jones, I think, was one of the examples. It was released, I think, for some platforms in 2025, but because I was asking a question about PC games, it was released in 2024 or whenever it was released, 2023, December maybe even. And so I know these things off the top of my head. How can I fact check this for questions I have no experience with?
Mhm.
You know, like stuff that I'm not an expert in. I can ask it questions, it gives me answers. Should I be trusting that information? So anyway, that's just one of the, there's many examples of things like that it can't, stuff that I've found that I think simple that it really can't do. But the thing is, it's claimed to be able to do that.
Mhm.
Like that surely is something that these things are supposed to be able to do. Have you found sort of similar when you've been using these things?
Yeah, not long ago, I was just messing around with ChatGPT. Similar sort of thing to you, seeing what it could find out for me quickly. And I just started with stuff I already know. So I was asking it for specifications on the 9070 XT, for example, stuff like, memory capacity, like some VRAM, core count, all that sort of stuff. First of all, it came back with the specs of the 7900 XT. So I'm like, no, the 9070 XT. So that had to clarify the actual model that I was after, which was a bit weird. And then it got the core count wrong. And then it kept wanting to give me, I don't know where it was pulling its data from, but it wanted to keep giving me the specifications for the 7900 XT.
Okay.
Don't know why. So it kept telling me like 20 gigabytes of VRAM instead of 16. And then eventually when I convinced it that I wanted the 9070 XT, then it got me the correct specs straight away. So that was a bit weird. I'm not sure what went wrong there. I've just tried a few things for specifications that I've been aware of, and it's not pulled those up very well. I don't know why it struggles to get that information sometimes and then not other times, but yeah, unreliable. I definitely wouldn't just use it and not cross-reference that data, which basically entails checking every single specification it gives you. And if you're going to do that, you might as well just get the information yourself. It doesn't really help. And even like image generation and stuff like that, we've dabbled with that, help with thumbnails and stuff. And I know a few people have thought we've had thumbnails that have been fully AI generated, but that isn't the case because it's nowhere near capable of doing that for us. So we've had to largely create like 80, 90% of the thumbnail and then get a small asset that we couldn't really make ourselves. And it's been okay for that. I mean, it's probably 1 in 10 thumbnails we use it for that. And it's okay for that, but again, it only does a small part of it. And sometimes you have to wait so long and prompt it so many different ways that it's easier to just go do the very difficult task yourself, do it the old school way, because you just get a better result and you're guaranteed to get there in the end.
Yeah, that's right. I feel like a lot of the tasks that I've gotten it to do, I guess, and I guess we're going to get comments from people who are using AI being like, well, you're not using it right. Like you're not
putting in
way. You're not putting in the prompt right. You're using it wrong. You're holding it wrong, kind of like that iPhone thing from a while ago, right?
Yep.
I feel like, so first of all, I'll give some more examples in a moment, but I feel like with that angle, it's always frustrated me because the advertising for AI has never been, you need to specifically put in the correct prompt to get the output that you want out. It's more, you can really put anything in and it just works.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how it's advertised. So if you have to really manipulate what you're telling it to get it to do something correctly, it's not really as useful as it's purported to be. And especially when, like I was using in my previous example, the sort of human test, like if I go ask, and I don't even use like a smart person usually for this test. If I go ask an idiot to do a task that's very simple, I would expect them to. Well, yeah, it's nice that you class yourself that way, so I don't have to. But yeah, so if I ask an idiot to do a task, what is the chance that they're going to get that task right? And if it's for something that's very complicated, like for example, if I ask an idiot to just go do some benchmarking for me, they're probably not going to know what they're doing and get it wrong, right? And it seems like AI can't do that either at the moment. But then, I was just one example that I was using recently, which is completely unrelated to work, was I had a list in a certain format. So it was like a number with a bracket and then a name. And then it was a very specific format, an ongoing list. And all I wanted AI to do was I had this list. It had about maybe 20 things in it. And I wanted it to continue the pattern for another 100 items. So I didn't have to copy and paste and increment the numbers being used and that sort of thing. And it was a very simple pattern. I would say that you could ask a child to do this task and they would get it right 100% of the time. They would perfectly be able to copy the pattern, use the right formatting. And so I asked, I think it was ChatGPT, I asked it, continue, here's this list that I've got, continue this formatting for the next 100 numbers, copying and pasting the numbers, just whatever the case was. And it returned the result and it got it largely right, but it didn't do the exact same format. It had changed the format of the list, which wasn't what I asked it to do. And so I think one of the issues was because it was a numbered list, I was using a bracket or something. It was replying with instead of one bracket the name, it was like one dot the name. And I wanted a bracket there. So I was like, can you please redo this, but keep the same format? And it just it gave the exact same answer back, like the exact same wrong formatting.
Yeah.
And so I asked it again. I'm like, no, not one dot this, one bracket this. But it refused to interpret the numbered list in a way that didn't respond with the list formatted with the dot. It could not do this task.
Yeah, it's trained in a specific way to do that task. And because it's not actual artificial intelligence, it can't interpret what you're saying because it's not trained to work in that way. It's like teaching someone to do something the wrong way, like bounce a basketball the wrong way. And they've been taught that way and then they just can't relearn it. Like once they've taught that way, that's the way they do it. And although it doesn't work, it's the way they do it. And that's just how it works when, these models get trained. And you see that all the time. And again, that's why the thumbnail thing doesn't really work out with the image generation. I saw a video from a guy that was, I think he was a filmmaker, and he was using Saw or something, and he was trying to make a very, very simple advertisement. And he gave it like very clear prompt on what to do. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this, and it does the ad, but it's very rigid. Like all the acting in it is sort of overacting, and then one of the people morphs into like a different gender. And he's like, okay, can we have it less rigid and no humans morphing into a different gender? And then it just does something. Anyway, he went back and forth like 10 times and it just kept screwing it up in a similar way every single time. And that's what I feel like with, when I'm prompting AI as well. I'm like, yeah, okay, can you not do this now and just do the thing I asked? And then it slightly changes it, but still ultimately does the wrong thing in the way that it wanted to do it, which is what you're talking about. So I found that really frustrating with it. So yeah, you sort of sit there going, well, I can't imagine this thing's going to be able to cure cancer if it can't get this extremely basic thing right.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a previous podcast I described AI as kind of a simpleton, and I think that was largely related to the way that it phrases words. Like if you get it to respond as the way that, especially I think ChatGPT responds with text, is written in a very, and I guess because of the way that it works, right? It's kind of like the average of all human writing. It produces this sort of like highly generic. There's no character to the writing at all. There's no voice. Like the way that you and I write scripts is different. The way we present videos is different because each of us has a slightly different style, slightly different voice. The same that, that differentiates us from like a Gamers Nexus video or whatever. But then the way AI writes, there's like none of that. That's all of that sort of personality style is stripped away to this extremely basic and almost like offensive way of speaking to you. And I don't mean offensive as in like it's using swear words. I mean, it's kind of like the output kind of treats me like an idiot. And I don't know what the current ChatGPT model is like. I guess this might have been a few models ago. But you know how it used to constantly affirm whatever you would say? Like you put in something and it would be like, oh, that's a great answer, or that's a great response. You're doing so well. I'm like, cool, but could you just get what I put in? Could you just do the task correctly?
That's more you being an engineer and not a normal human.
Well, potentially.
No, I know what you're saying. It's trying to be, relatable and very personable and stuff like that. So it's trying It's trying to mimic like, I'm a real human, but I'm also really smart. But again, I think as a tool, I think for what it is, all these various different AIs, whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT, I think they are, my sort of opinion is they are extremely impressive. What they're able to do is very impressive. Some of the stuff is quite mind-blowing in what it can achieve under the right conditions. And for some fields, it's really an invaluable tool, extremely useful. Again, what we're saying is it's not doing some of the things that was advertised to do curing cancer. But I think more than that is what it takes to achieve it. So the amount of resources that need to be thrown at it, because it wasn't just something that was invented in a shed. And it's like, oh, wow, how did no one else think to invent this thing that you invented in your shed? That's incredible. That's very cool. It's required hundreds of billions of dollars to get to this point. Huge amount of sacrifice and resources. And when you weigh up the cost to get to where it's got to, it's far less impressive. It's kind of like anything that we review, like when we review a new GPU or whatever, we're like, well, you know, the 5090 is a really impressive GPU. It's really fast, but it's not that much faster than the 4090. And, you know, it uses more power and it costs more money. So once you weigh all that up, it's a lot less exciting. It's a lot less impressive. And that it's kind of the same thing here. And I guess that's sort of what we'll work into is, the cost and sacrifice of getting to the point that we've got to and where it's going to go beyond here.
Yeah, it's I definitely agree that it's impressive in the outputs that it can generate. I think that we need to kind of distinguish, and I think this is what a lot of the AI sort of truth that people don't distinguish necessarily, is that there's a difference between an output being impressive and an output being good enough, if you know what I mean. Like, it's very impressive that AI can generate semi to quite realistic looking images, for example. Like, that is very impressive. I couldn't do that. I can't draw that well, so it's not a task I can do particularly well, right? AI seems to be really good at doing some of these things. But then, is it good enough to be used in sort of like, you know, you was talking about the image generation with the ad. It's like super impressive that it could generate that video, but like, is that video good enough to be actually used? And I think the answer is no. And similar with, you know, the text generation, the genericness of the way that it writes, very impressive. It can do that, but it's not good enough to be at the level of an author that people would actually pay money to read the books of, you know, or that sort of thing. And certainly for our work, like, you know, it can do, in some senses, it is better than Google at sort of, you know, finding a list of things that you might be asking for. But because it gets some of the things wrong in that list, it may get 95% of the list correct. But because it gets some of it wrong, it means we have to go through and recheck it and stuff. So it's not good enough for us because we want the videos to be 100% accurate or as close to that as we possibly can get. And so if we spot errors, that's a problem, right? So yeah, the fact that it can do all those things is impressive. And I think the main thing that I've seen people say that it can do really well that I'm not particularly familiar with is more the coding side of things. I know that, you know, there are some issues with the quality of code that it can produce, the security flaws that it potentially can introduce when generating code. But it does seem like for that task, there is a lot of potential there to speed it up and be used more as not this multi-purpose tool, but kind of like a specialized coding enhancer sort of ability that it has. But again, like, I'm not super familiar with that. So I'm sort of going off my experience using it as more of that sort of everyday user. Like, I'm probably not going to be someone that would buy a business coding plan, but if I was charged for AI, there'd be sort of like maybe a personal plan or something like that. That would sort of be more what I'm looking at. And it just isn't something that I would consider paying for. So, and that gets to sort of your disconnect, right? Like, the tool that we're sort of describing and I'm sort of saying is not actually good enough for me to use, but then they've spent $100 billion making it. It's like, yeah, I mean, $100 billion is probably not even close to the actual number. I think it could be something like $500 billion that they've currently invested across all the different platforms, company. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a lot of investment.
Yeah. The billions of dollars don't really mean anything anymore. It's just become so trivial now. It's like
Mm.
90 billion, 100 billion, 200 billion, what I don't know, some billion.
Yeah, I mean the level of investment that has gone into something, and this is, I guess, the big question mark around AI and the whole bubble thing is they've invested so much money, they need to get money back at some point to justify the investment. They need a return on it, but is it at a level where people would actually be willing to pay for using it? And then on top of that, would they be willing to pay the actual price of doing these tasks on AI? So there's all these sorts of levels to this money problem that they're sort of facing here. I think one of the biggest hurdles, just to begin with, is even just convincing people to pay for it at all. Like, I think a lot of people are sort of in our position where they've used these tools, this kind of it's kind of fun to mess around with the image generation and stuff like that, but it has no real practical purpose. You're not really going to pay someone to use this random image generator thing that sometimes doesn't produce things that are particularly useful. And so, how are they going to get this money back if they can't convince the broad majority of people to actually pay to use it?
Yep, I got no idea on that one. If we can work that out, we'd solve some problems for Sam and his mates. But even if it did cure cancer, like we were promised a while ago, that was one of the big benefits for mankind. How do they make money off that?
Yep. I'm not sure. Like, are they going to get $100 billion of money from that?
Not sure. Yeah, it's a strange one. As they say with the AI bubble and the AI boom, like the math doesn't math on this one. Like I think they're hoping that they do just create this super intelligence that then solves all their problems for them. But I think it's becoming increasingly clear that's just not going to happen. And that was I don't know, delusional pipe dream to begin with. Like going from these large language models to Skynet. I'm not sure. This is sort of the part that I'm completely confused by, and I've been sitting here scratching my head now for quite a while, trying to work out how they thought this was all going to work out. Like, I get it from NVIDIA's perspective. They're sitting there rubbing their hands here. They don't really care that much. I mean, the more this goes on, the better for them.
They just make hardware.
Yeah.
They're kind of like the endpoint of it, right? Like, they make the hardware. It's not on NVIDIA to sort of make the tools that the hardware requires. They benefit from people trying to get this software to work. So they're in the clear, really, in terms of the investment side of things, the money side of things. I mean, there is all the circular valuation stuff that we might touch on later, but in terms of the actual product that they're making an actually useful, legitimate product. Like, it's the AI models run really well on NVIDIA GPUs. There's no question about that. They're a capable hardware product, and so what they're selling is definitely something that's viable. The issue is more the companies investing and buying the NVIDIA GPUs. How do they make back the money that they've spent training these models, investing in building out the server infrastructure, building the servers, getting the power generation in so that they can actually power the servers and all that sort of thing. And that goes right back to the producers of the actual tools that people are using, because people don't buy NVIDIA AI GPUs when they're using ChatGPT. They're paying for ChatGPT, or they're paying for Claude Code or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that there's, for things like coding, for example, there will be value in that, to be spending maybe even hundreds of dollars a month on coding assisting tools in a professional setting. But does that get you to hundreds of billions of dollars? I don't know. I'd say probably not. And certainly for the broad, like the general use case, this sort of like, it can summarize your calendar and summarize your emails. It's like, how much would people pay to have email summarized? Probably some trivial amount of money. Like, if you're talking like, how much does like Spotify or Netflix cost these days? Like $20 a month or something. How much would you pay to have an email summarized? Like a cent a month?
Yeah, I mean, I think they were hoping that would be one of the endless things it does for you. So it literally does everything for you, down to the most trivial things to the most demanding tasks, and therefore it's something you couldn't possibly live without. But it doesn't do that, so that's the problem. It's massively underdelivered on what they thought it would achieve by this point.
I guess the investment, it would make sense, this level of investment, if the capabilities of the product were in line with the advertisement of the product.
Yeah.
If it was really a super intelligence that could do everything flawlessly, then yeah, spend $1 trillion on that because it's going to be used by absolutely everything. But the problem is that it doesn't do that. And the question is like, how long can they ever do that? And I think the answer is no, but also like, how long would it be until that was even theoretically possible?
And then how does that even work though? Like, I don't need you anymore then, but then am I even required anymore at that point? And then who's required and who's not required? So it kind of like breaks everything if there's this super intelligence that can do everything.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of see it like, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Star Trek, but
No. Oh.
so in Star Trek, they invented the replicator, right? So it's essentially a device that, you doop, 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 things go in and then out comes food, right? It's basically, it's a food generator out of nothing.
Yep. I feel like we need Elon Musk for this section, but go on.
Well, not really. All my point is, right, in Star Trek, the whole economy is very, very different because they invented this replicator technology that means that you don't need to pay people to do a lot of things because this replicator can just create stuff. So once that is generated, once you can create this product, everything completely changes to the point where money is not really a thing as much anymore. Because if you want something, you use the replicator. And there's this whole, I think in some of them, again, I haven't watched all of Star Trek. I've watched, the Next Generation, stuff like that. But there's a bit of discussion about, societies that have replicated technology, societies that don't have replicated technology, and how much of a difference that makes. Like getting to that technology is so essential.
It's so funny. Like, I was saying about how Hollywood's primed people for these fantasies, and then you go and give us Star Trek. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think that's really how any of this works. And just because of human nature and
of course, like we're more likely to get into like some sort of dystopian hellscape than a utopian Star Trek example. But yeah,
this is not how it works at all. There's going to be people that aren't contributing or doing the right things. It'll probably go more in that direction than the positive direction. And then like, where do you get this infinite power that you can just give the people that don't want to contribute in a meaningful way the ability to replicate whatever they want? I don't know. This is too deep for me, Tim. Like, can we get back to I'm trying to play Cyberpunk?
Sure. But I guess what we're talking about here is there's a big gap in the difference between what these models can do and what they're advertised to do. And all the funding only makes sense if they can get to the point of what they're sort of going for, this super intelligence that can do absolutely everything. And I guess the problem that they're sort of facing, and the problem we see and a lot of other people see, is money going to run out before they reach that level? Or again, maybe it's not technologically possible based on the large language model design. I think there's a lot of points I've read from people that seem to know that suggest that might not be possible even to begin with. But in the goal of searching for that, are they going to run out of money?
Yeah, it certainly seems like it based on my understanding. There's obviously one of the key roadblocks at the moment is power. So actually having the ability to power all of these data centers, all of these GPUs, so they can do what they need to do. So Project Stargate, which just sounds funny saying that out loud, but I think it's the first time we've said on the podcast. So that's a cluster of data centers that'll be built in the US, and that's basically meant to be happening. Well, it's meant to be happening right now. And they require, I believe, 10 gigawatts of power across all of the data centers. And my understanding is a singular nuclear power plant delivers about 1 gigawatt of power, and they need 10, which they don't, like, there's not 10 gigawatts of power just sitting there waiting to be used, obviously. So they need to have the infrastructure in place to generate that power, let alone deliver it and all of that. I'm sure there's upstream complications involved there as well. So they also need to build the power plants. When I looked into this, the US has built a single nuclear power plant in the last 30 years. So my understanding is, like, again, if I'm understanding this correctly, they need to build 10 of them in the next few years, and they've managed to build one in the last 30. And it took over a decade to construct, and it went billions of dollars over budget. So there's like an insane financial cost there just in making the power plant, let alone maintaining it, running it, and then the data centers and all of that. And that's a whole different mess. So if they aren't able to build these data centers and then power these data centers in time, it all falls apart. Like, it all hinges on this impossible build out. Like, that alone. But again, it to me, it seems like there's things here that I'm just clearly not understanding or aware of, because why would you make these insane commitments and announcements if it's not humanly possible under any known timeline? There's nothing you can point to and go, well, this was done here. So if we just have enough money and throw enough manpower at it, we can achieve this goal. So I don't know. What do you think about all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think when it comes to like the investment side of things, the sort of, the timelines and all that sort of thing, I think those announcements of timelines and stuff are purely just for the stock market purposes. Like the whole goal there is to pump up the stock valuation, get investors excited, get people investing in these companies, and that's that. I don't think they're meant to be. I think they're meant to be presented as realistic, but I don't think they internally believe it's realistic. I don't know this. Again, I'm not saying like I have insider info and they're saying at OpenAI they can't build all this stuff. I think that the people that are in charge of actually building these things would know for sure that it's not possible. But it's like, what's possible doesn't matter when you're sort of advertising to investors on the stock market. Like it seems like these days, lying is just the way of the world. You just say crap and then people give you money based on the crap that you say. It doesn't matter whether the crap you say is true or not. You just say it and hope for the best. And then if you're wrong, nothing really happens. There's no consequences or anything. So you just keep doing it. You just keep lying and going in that sort of cycle. So I think that explains what they're sort of talking about. I think with the actual build outs that they're attempting, I mean, it makes sense to do that if you genuinely believe the product is better than what we believe it is. So again, that disconnect between what's being advertised and what's the actual reality. In our opinion, if you truly believe that the data centers you're building are going to enable this, I guess, fantastic technology that will be available for everyone and you'll be able to dominate the world with your amazing tech, sure, go build some data centers so that you can achieve that plan. I think the problem that they're going to face is the current running costs of these services. It seems like they lose quite substantial amounts of money.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer it takes to get to the point where they've got this technology where AI actually works properly, the more money they are going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Because, so let's assume, for example, that let's say OpenAI can make an AI model. It's exclusive to them. It's a super intelligence. It's wildly profitable, right? This is all of their hopes and dreams are achieved once they're finished at a certain level of data center build out, right? Are they going to be able to get to that point before they completely run out of money? Because if that takes them 10 years, they may burn, I don't know, $1 trillion, $500 billion or something. Can they justify continued spending to get to that level? And I'm not sure there is enough investment money to continue funneling to get to that point. Because obviously if there's this like pot of gold at some point in the future where you can be making billions, trillions of dollars to make back your investment, it all makes sense to do that whole process. But if you need to keep digging the money hole deeper and deeper and deeper until you finally reach that level where you can go up, it puts you at a pretty significant risk if like let's say you're trying to build a data center and now the power plant is delayed. Like that may not just cost you a couple of $1 billion of additional cost of building the power plant. That may cost a company with an AI model like $50 billion of additional, like, losing money they have to do on the models that aren't good enough yet.
Yep.
If you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
So that is a big problem. And then the second problem is, what if they achieve this final goal where they make all these excellent models, but then there's extreme competition because it's not just OpenAI building the models, it's Meta, it's all those other companies, it's Google, they're all building their own sort of models. What if they end up spending trillions of dollars, but all they end up with is every company has a very similar model and product? So there's no domination aspect, there's no monopoly, there's just competition on the same sort of product, which drives prices down. So
I think initially OpenAI thought that would be the case, that they would be the dominant player and there'd be no real competition. And very quickly that was proven not to be the case.
yeah, and I think the other issue is it will theoretically be possible at some point, as your personal computing hardware gets better, to run some level of this technology on your own computing hardware for free. There are already open source models, by understanding, not that I've used them, but my understanding is there are open source models that can do a portion of things that ChatGPT and these technologies can do at a reasonable level that have no cost whatsoever. Like, you don't have to pay for a service, you just run it on your own hardware. It costs obviously the hardware and running costs for yourself, but you're not paying a service to do this for you, which is obviously the whole business model that they're kind of going for.
Yep.
So that's another significant risk that these companies have. They have the risk of they will continue to lose money until the point that these things are built, and they may run out of money before that. But then when they reach it, they may not have this pot of gold, this revenue generating thing at the end of the day. And it is possible as well that maybe this ultimate goal of ChatGPT final version or whatever is profitable when it's currently not profitable. And it does make some amount of money, but will that pay back the trillions of dollars that they're investing prior to that?
That's the other problem though, because you and I are painfully aware when you talk about paying back stuff that the upfront costs are never just the upfront costs. So 70% of the cost of these AI data centers is in the GPUs themselves, which makes it difficult to fund them, because those GPUs will be obsolete in, I don't know, what's the time frame you want to put that? Certainly within a 6-year time frame. So that 70% of that investment becomes worthless in a relatively short period of time. Whereas if you were producing some sort of large-scale manufacturing plant, you would expect, like a 20-year lifespan off the machines that are producing parts there, not 3. And 3 would definitely be a reasonable time frame, because your GPUs or whatever it is you're using, there'll be something significantly more efficient and better in about a 3-year time period. Certainly in a 6-year time period. And already...
And just to interject, that's not to say that the old GPU hardware is going to be completely useless in 3 years. It'll still have a use. It's just that...
Well, it may not have a use, though. It may not be feasible to power that hardware, given how much better the updated hardware is. But also it does have a lifespan. Like when you're running these GPUs full tilt, 100% load, there will be a certain failure rate within that window, but then there'll only be a certain period of time where you can run that silicon at 100% capacity before it burns up. Like I don't know exactly what that time frame is. Obviously, they try to run it in an optimal window where you get a reasonable lifespan out of it. But it is a consumable product. Like it will burn out at some point.
Oh yeah, for sure. I was thinking more along the lines of, as more powerful hardware comes online, the percentage of the overall processing pool that would be the older hardware becomes a very small amount, percentage-wise, in terms of the total compute capacity. So over time, eventually, as you sort of have pointed out, right, it becomes there is a point where it's no longer economically viable because the current hardware is so much further ahead. Kind of like old supercomputers, right? Like an old supercomputer is worthless because a modern PC has the same processing power, so there's no point spinning up the supercomputer to do that task. That old hardware just becomes pretty much obsolete, as opposed to a factory that makes metal parts or something where it can just pump those out, and you know that is what it is. And I mean, there is of course some depreciation with mechanical manufacturing components as well, so don't want to ignore those sorts of things as well. But yeah, I mean, that is clearly an issue with these sorts of things. And it's not just the investment in the GPU hardware, it's the investment in training the models as well, because the models themselves become obsolete over time.
Mhm.
The old, crappy, original ChatGPT models that they spent however much, even just ignoring the GPUs, they spent a certain level of power cost.
I think it was like $100 million for the original ChatGPT,
Sure.
and then like ChatGPT 3 or something was like $1 billion of power to train. That was something like, so the figures were insane. It was something like that.
Sure. So they've had to spend an absurd amount of money training models that are no longer offered. So
Mhm.
essentially they've burnt that money
Mhm.
and on a product that is no longer being offered. And
Mhm.
so this is going to be, I would imagine, an indefinite issue, because again, it's not just ChatGPT that's making, or OpenAI that's making models. There's strong competition from a lot of different companies all making their own models. So you can't just sit around and not make a model. You have to keep making new models that are better and better and better, because otherwise people are not going to use the models with the worst capabilities. And I've seen a lot of this when sort of researching, the use cases that people have, and especially in the coding realm, it seems like people are very willing to switch. So if there is the coding tool that they're using from Claude or whatever, and then suddenly Gemini gets better, they instantly switch over. And so they stop paying their subscription at the old provider and they start paying the subscription at the new provider. And so that means that all these companies need to keep burning all this money to create models. And so there's strong model depreciation, if you know what I mean. Like that, they've spent money on something that they can no longer offer, so it's been depreciated, and that ongoing cost. Yeah, I mean that's a significant cost for them as well. And I guess they're wanting to get to this point where they can, the money that they make back from running the inference is much greater than the amount that it costs to train new models. So it's just a standard research and development cost. But at the moment, it seems like the whole package of having to do everything is such a significant money losing proposition that seems so far away from being the reality.
Yeah, the
Um,
overhead's just like nothing we've ever seen before.
yeah, and the models get bigger and more complicated and more expensive to train. Like, you've seen all that news of like, which was the company that bought all the books and then was scanning them and then just like destroying the books and stuff. Like, that's got to be an expensive process to go through.
Yeah, I forget now. But yeah, so it seems like OpenAI is probably going to be closed to AI by sometime in 2027. I would guess someone like Microsoft would probably buy them. And then OpenAI would no longer really exist as an entity. It would just be like part of Microsoft. Something like that's probably going to happen. And then I think the cracks will start to show on this AI thing not delivering what's been promised, and the investment and stuff will cool off. And yeah, I'm not 100% sure what will happen beyond that point, but I think at that point you'll start to see stuff like DDR5 memory start being produced again. So we'll see.
Yeah, I expect it to get to a point where AI is just, it's on the hype phase. It's just a tool that's available for people to use if they want to use it. There'll be continued investment, like a lot of different things that have sort of come and
Yep.
disrupted the world, like the internet bubble and that sort of thing. When that started to become a technology for the first time, big boom period, there was a bust, but it's not like the internet went away. It was still around. People used it. It just, that initial investment period when a lot of companies were spinning up, doing all sorts of different things, there was consolidation. There was, it reverted to a more sustainable norm. And I'm sure that will happen with AI as well. There will be some sort of sustainable level. Maybe it won't have the capabilities that were originally promised, but maybe they'll be able to make efficient coding models for people to use and efficient generation models for people to use for other tasks. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, there's certainly going to be some issues. And I think there's definitely, when you look at the deals and chat that's being made, there's certainly a lot of red flags that you can sort of see. I think one of them being ChatGPT trying to integrate ads into the product. If they had a really viable service that people wanted to pay for. People were really encouraged to pay for it because it was high quality. It's not really something that they would need to offer ads in, because they'd be, the paid version would be so good that, people would just be encouraged to pay it. But they're clearly in this position where there's a lot of risk making the free version paid. So they kind of need to just continue it as a loss leader. And that seems to be not particularly economically viable. And then in addition to that, there's all the circular financing deals, which you might have seen places like Gamers Nexus cover extensively, but sort of these deals where you sort of just see, so one company is investing in another company so that they can just go straight back and buy hardware from the first company, or deals like AMD sort of, oh, you can buy our hardware, but then also sort of like own part of the company because, we want to increase our stock price or something. And a lot of companies going, maybe the circle isn't just two companies, but Nvidia pays Oracle, or Nvidia pays OpenAI, then they pay Oracle, and it's big circles like that and stuff like that. That all seems pretty problematic to me. I'm not a financial expert, but I would think that at some point you can't just keep transferring money from one company to another and have it actually, like, there is actual dollars at some point that has to be exchanged for a company to make money. Like, I can't just give you $50 to do something and you give it back to me. We haven't both made $50 then. We're a completely neutral amount of money. So that's going to have to be a problem at some point, I would think. Like, I just don't understand how it would not be a problem.
Yeah, well, I think Nvidia has to hit like $90 billion in quarterly GPU sales by like later this year to justify its stock price. And I'm not sure how they're going to do that because of what you've just been talking about. And again, they've shipped, I think it's estimated between like 6 and 12 gigawatts of GPUs that there's no infrastructure to actually power those yet. So again, like what's going to happen with all of those? And you mentioned like the .com bubble, which I think that was again like an infrastructure bubble. It was about the fiber optic cables. They just laid out way too much of that stuff that went unused, but it had a lifespan of about 20 years. So eventually most of it did get used. Whereas it comes back to what we we're talking about before, these GPUs realistically have a 3 to 6 year lifespan. Again, they don't really have the infrastructure to use them anyway. They certainly don't have the power to use them. So it's this massive amount of investment and a thing that's probably never going to get used, which will make the burst of this bubble significantly more devastating than what we saw with the .com bubble.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the potential plays that a company could make, and this would be very interesting if it comes to this, but if there's a significant delay in the amount of time it takes to install a GPU into a data center, but then NVIDIA continues to release newer generations. At some point, it would be possible for a newer company who doesn't have a whole bunch of GPUs sitting around in a warehouse to go in and buy the latest generation and install that more quickly into a warehouse, if you know what I mean. Like, let's say you're Amazon, you're committing a whole bunch of GPUs into, you're starting building up these warehouses. They're taking ages and ages and ages. And by the time you install, the GPUs in that warehouse that you've built, a whole new generation, maybe multiple generations have come out because you've got this such a huge backlog that you have to install at some point. Surely at some point, a more agile company can come in and be like, well, we'll buy a newer generation. We won't have so much backlog that we need to install. We can just go and start installing those newer data centers before the big players can finish installing the stuff that they've already paid for. Surely that's got to be a problem at some point. That is going to put a serious threat to these companies, especially if those newer hardware is powerful enough to enable additional capabilities.
Yeah, I think the way it's going is more likely Google and companies like that are going to win because Google are already using like custom TPUs. So they're not relying on NVIDIA hardware. They've already just avoided that entire mess to begin with. So I think they're probably going to be the winners of like this AI race. That seems the most likely outcome to me anyway. But yeah, also what you were saying earlier, basically, I think in summary, the market just needs to wake up to the difference between circular revenue and actual real revenue. And once that happens, that's again going to be the part where it all comes crashing down. Because the timeline to date sort of been 2024, 2025, all the promises in the world. So that's like the AI is going to cure cancer phase. And then so far, 2026, as far as I'm seeing it, is the denial period. Like the goalposts keep moving. It's the, it's a skill issue. You're not using it correctly, holding it right, that sort of stuff. And then I predict next year is going to be the unfulfilled commitments. Like these data centers aren't going to be built. This stuff's not going to be brought online. The reality of all these shortfalls is going to set in, and there's not going to be a customer base for it. So the lack of customers is also going to become very apparent. And that's all part of the crack showing, and that's when it's going to start to fall apart, in my opinion. So I think it'll happen as early as 2027. I've heard other people saying, this is going to go on till like 2030 and stuff like that. But based on everything I'm researching and seeing, it's going to happen in 2027 is my prediction.
Yeah, I think there's a strong enshittification risk with AI. The sort of, as we've seen from a lot of companies, you create this product, you have to encourage people to use it, so you basically offer it at a loss.
Mm-hmm.
You lose tons of money to gain all the users, and then you start have to tightening the screws to actually make the money back. So, seen with things like Netflix, catalog gets smaller, much more bifurcation of offerings. So you have to be subscribed to more services to get all the content that you want. And then the price goes up as well. That is absolutely going to happen with AI as well. That is the way of the modern world. AI will be enshittified, and the product that you're currently using will either get worse in its capabilities or become more expensive. That is almost certainly going to happen. And I think there's going to be, I definitely agree with you about this denial period. I think there's going to be a big correction period. And I don't mean correction in the sort of financial stock market sense, but more a correction of the amount that companies have to charge for the product has to more closely align with the cost of actually providing the service. And I think once we start heading in that direction of that correction, things are going to really start getting serious, because if the capabilities of the products aren't increasing to the level of the advertising, and they're enshittifying it because they need to actually start making money, I think you're going to see a lot of these companies hyping AI pull back a significant portion from their sort of use of the technology. Mm-hmm. Because it's all well and good to use a heavily subsidized AI tool right now that's either free or extremely cheap relative to the cost of providing it. That's great. But if it's sort of in that phase of still being, not quite good enough to be used for a lot of tools, and then it's getting more expensive, and then the capabilities are not accelerating in the same capacity, I think you'll find that the tolerance for the problems that we have today is going to be a lot lower in the future. So companies that are sort of willing to, we'll have some AI agents do some stuff for us, and there'll be some errors and issues, and we'll just pay people to correct those errors and issues and work through all those problems. That's great if the AI service is extremely cheap. Mm-hmm. But once it starts getting more expensive, I think you'll see companies be a lot less willing to deal with those problems.
Yeah, once they can't mask the economics of it, and people are like, I have to pay a lot of money for this crap. No, thank you.
For sure. And I think there's going to be issues as well where companies who have used AI will be rotting parts of their infrastructure, where AI is used for coding tasks and stuff that is introducing potential issues. Maybe the people implementing these tools or whatever are not as trained as they would have been prior to the AI era, so they're not as fully up to speed with the architecture of what they're designing. And if that starts creating problems that are expensive to fix, like security issues or functionality breaking and things like that, I think, again, you'll see companies that, because really it's businesses that will have to drive this revenue. Your everyday average person spending $20 a month is not going to make a huge impact, but businesses spending big, if they've rotted their infrastructure and have to repair it, or if the enshittification happens and they start not investing as much, it's going to be catastrophic, I guess. It seems that they would have widespread implications for all the investors, all the companies involved. Isn't it a significant portion of the United States GDP or the United States stock market is like investment in AI and stuff?
Well, that was one of Trump's big things that he announced straight away, was the Project Stargate. I always go to think I'm saying the wrong thing when I say Project Stargate. But they went all in on it. So, I mean, yeah, if this does fall apart and starts to fall apart next year, what that means for the US economy, I'm not sure. How they manage that, I'm not sure. That'll be a Trump administration problem. But yeah, they've gone heavily in on this.
So, unless you have anything else to really talk about this, I'm very interested to see the comments on this podcast because I'm sure that we're going to get some people saying, you've got absolutely no idea. You don't know what you're talking about. This is just our sort of.
I wouldn't argue with them.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily argue with them either. These are just my thoughts and opinions based on what I've sort of seen. I've tried to sort of not necessarily keep up is maybe not the right word, but I'm interested in what is going on. That's probably the best way of putting it. I'm interested in how things are being developed, what's happening, and also just using the tools as they've been claimed so far, seeing if they can improve my workflow. And you've sort of seen the examples I've given in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't place much stock in other people's opinion on this either.
We're just a bunch of morons like all the rest of them. That's kind of how it works, right?
We're a bunch of fleshy agents that have no idea, that hallucinate more often than not.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, that's the AI stuff, I think. So let's take a break. Let's come back and we'll get into some boring life stuff. All right. And we're back. Has anything been happening over your way, Steve, at this point? I was just out there yesterday to film some Q&As and stuff. So, you'll be seeing those on the channel pretty soon. But
yes, so you are pretty well up to date with all the things that haven't been happening here. Just the usual sort of work going on behind the scenes, where I'm still putting a lot of time and effort into updating the X870 motherboard testing. Yep, that's a lot of work, and there's probably nobody looking at buying X870 motherboards at this point in time, but we'll do it anyway. And the RTX 5070 Ti GPUs have been slowly trickling in. I've got a couple from Gigabyte. Asus has come to the table with a couple now. And MSI, though, I haven't got nearly as many MSI models as I would have liked. And their new Expert card, apparently that's already end of life. So they won't be providing that model. Anyway, that's sort of work-related stuff. And then sort of personal life stuff. I actually did try a new tool, so I can talk about that. So that was a bit of fun.
Cool.
We've got the Hardware Box Gym now, which I've been using for probably not quite a year yet. Let's say 10 months. I'm going with 10 months. We've been using it for 10 months now. It's been good. Bale and I use it a lot. But we had to finish the drainage and everything around that part of the building. So, and then just distribute the water across the property. And I have to lay about 200 meters of storm water pipe. So that's a lot of trenching. And some of you guys know I have a mini skid steer that I use a lot and love. And a while ago, I bought a trenching tool for it, which I did a fair bit of research on. It's like a digger. I think it's like a chainsaw for dirt, Tim.
Yeah, I've seen those, yeah.
Yeah. So the ground's rock hard at the moment because, summer, dry. But we thought we would give it a go anyway. And it was a thing of beauty, Tim. It just went through the ground like butter. Just this.
Wow. Even in this weather. That's crazy.
It seemed like it was optimal, really, in the way that it works, because it files away at the earth. And it gives you like a pile of powder. Whereas I imagine if there's a bit of moisture, it'll get more, what's the correct terminology?
Clogged?
Yeah, clogged. Let's go with clogged. But, like a clay type thing, even though it's topsoil, it just sort of clumps together. And I feel like it probably wouldn't work as well. There'll be a percentage of moisture that's probably optimal. But anyway, we have near enough to zero at the moment. So it just comes out like a fine powder. But it went through it effortlessly. It was like it was going through nothing. It was no different to running it in the open air. So anyway, created an awesome trench, and we've started laying pipe in that. So that's been a pleasure, because some of the stuff up near the house, which was in really hard clay, we could have potentially used the trenching tool there, but we decided not to. I used the excavator, which obviously does a great job as well, but it's just a bit more mess, bit slower. Whereas the trenching tool is just, it's like there's other products like Ditch Witch and stuff like that people might have heard of, but it's a common thing used by plumbers and stuff. Anyway, I bought one a while ago, and it's really good. So I've we did a couple of 100 meters worth of that, and I'll probably use it for other things in the future as well. So I want to run a network cable down to the back as well, so I'll use it for that and a few other things. But it was great success, because the problem with the skid steer is, opposed to the excavator, is with the excavator arm, you have a lot of good downwards pressure because it's a digging machine. So I have an auger on both of them, and the auger on the skid steer, not so good. It just can't, I think the machine weighs 900 kilos. So it's a heavy little skid steer, but it's not able to, the weight is very much at the base where you stand on it and not over the arm. So it doesn't drill down very well. You don't get pressure over the drill bit, whereas the excavator can very much, push down with tons of force on the bit. So you can push it through like clay and stuff quite easily. So given how the auger didn't work very well, I also bought like a tree stump remover, which again is like an auger bit that you push down. It just doesn't work that well, whereas it works very well in the excavator. So I wasn't sure how this trenching tool would go on the skid steer, but because you're pulling it backwards mostly, so you're slowly driving backwards as it's doing its like chainsaw thing, it works extremely well. So happy with that. So other than putting PVC pipes in the ground, Tim, I've not done much else with my spare time. So what about you?
Well, I recently bought a car. So
that's right. I did see your car.
Yeah, you would have seen it yesterday. So you can no longer make fun of me for having an outdated car.
Hang on. Not so fast there. You still have your old Mazda 3, right?
I do. Yes, I do have my Mazda 6. So it's
Mazda 6. Sorry, I tried to downgrade it on you further.
You did try to downgrade on it. I used to own 2 cars. So one for me, the Mazda 6 that I usually used, and then my partner had a Hyundai. And so we still actually have the Hyundai, but that's the car that is getting replaced.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with Mazda 6s, by the way. I'm not trying to offend anyone.
Mazda 6, great car.
Yeah,
love it.
It's a running joke with Tim and I. So there's nothing wrong with his Mazda. It's perfectly fine.
It still works. It is. It's got about 200,000 Ks on the clock now. It's just ticked over 200,000 Ks. It's from 2004, so it's quite old at this point, over 20 years old. Still works, still runs great. No major mechanical issues. If you could go back in time and tell people, highly reliable, great car. Me and my partner, we wanted to get an SUV. So we decided to go around and have a look at all of the different sort of normal SUV options that you would see from all the various different brands, your Mazdas, your Hyundais, your Kias, all those sorts of things. Nothing fun or exciting. No high performance vehicles, just your standard SUVs. So went and tried all of them. Liked some of them, didn't like some of them. Some of them weren't quite big enough for the things that we were looking for. We landed on buying a Hyundai Tucson, which is a perfectly fine sort of option. Honestly, all of them are pretty similar. I know, for example, like Hyundai and Kia are basically the same company, so you get a lot of crossover between the models that they make. But even outside of, testing different brands and stuff, they all offer basically the same stuff these days. Very, very similar. So just bought one of those. It's perfectly fine. It has got a lot more features that make driving easier. So
than the Mazda?
The Mazda has like no driving assist. It's got cruise control.
What year is it again? I forget.
It's a 2004 model. So cruise control would have been one of the highly advertised features back then, I would have thought, like coming as standard or whatever, back when that was a thing.
Yep.
So yeah, it's you don't have to do as much thinking driving modern cars with all of their lane assist stuff and lane centering.
You should still think though, Tim.
Yeah. I'm not going to fully go to sleep, but I reckon you probably could in some scenarios. But yeah, like what is it, like dynamic cruise control or whatever with the radar? That seems to be okay.
Yeah, I hate that. Honestly, the old school cruise control was way better, because what happens with that, sorry to hijack your story, if you're in like the left lane, you're cruising along and you come up to someone sitting in the right-hand lane, which they shouldn't be doing, and say they're doing 90 in the 100 zone, which they shouldn't be doing, often the radar will detect their car and slow down, without you sort of noticing because you're just daydreaming because the car's doing all the work for you. And before you know it, you're just following this car going too slowly in either the right or the left-hand lane, whereas the old cruise control, you actually had to pay attention because it would just send you into the back of the car, which you're probably looking as a downside. But for me, I preferred because you paid attention to driving and your car just wouldn't lull you into, hey, now we're doing 15 Ks under the speed limit. And then
sure, yeah, I have noticed that a little bit, to be honest, testing the radar cruise control stuff. So you do need to, if you want to do overtaking on those sort of roads, you do have to pay a little bit more attention to the speed going down and stuff like that.
And then you'll get it like doing emergency braking when someone's turning into their driveway or whatever. Your car might not be that bad at that, but like the BMW X5 that I bought is terrible at it. Super duper bad. I think they've fixed that now, but the model we got, very bad.
Yeah, I've seen it come up with a warning once in a while, being like, you should probably brake now. I haven't run into the emergency braking stuff. It probably has a feature like that.
It definitely will, yeah.
Some of the other stuff that people probably laugh about because of how outdated my old car is compared to my new one. Modern headlights, way better. I always complained about getting blasted by other people's headlights when I was driving because obviously the Mazda 6 sits a little lower down. A lot of modern headlights are those high-intensity, bright white LED versions. And I always hated those people. I thought, those headlights should definitely be illegal. And I still think this, but now I've just joined the group. So now I can blast other people directly in their eyeballs with my bright white headlights. And I'll feel like I'm part of the cool group. So that was a nice upgrade and improvement.
Nice. You just wear sunglasses at night, Tim. That solves that problem.
Yeah, I could. I think one of the big features that I found really useful is the car does have wireless Apple thing and Android Auto. Obviously, I have an Android phone, so Android Auto. That works really well, flawlessly. I've tried some previous cars, like when I was driving around Iceland and I was driving a Kia. It had only the wired version of that. Very janky, did not work well, constant cable issues. This latest Hyundai has been flawless with the wireless version. It's got like a wireless charger and I just sit my phone on it. Works super well. So happy with that. And yeah, just the ride comfort. It's a hybrid version, so it's not a plug-in or anything, but it's got a battery in it for a bit more, it can recharge the battery when you're braking, stuff like that. I'm not a car guy. This is a feature it's got. I got that version over the version without the hybrid because the non-hybrid version was very pissy in terms of its engine. I was like, I'm not a big engine guy, but even the base model engine, this is too pissy for me. But the hybrid version.
So the hybrid assist is not so much for range; it's just to give it a bit more oomph on acceleration.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of like highway driving where it's not. I mean, it does seem to be a bit beneficial at times, but yeah, it's just the power from the engine with the hybrid is better. So we liked the interior style of the car, the features and that sort of thing, but just went for the hybrid because it's the more powerful option, I guess. Seems much more fuel efficient than my car, my old Mazda as well. I think it uses about 2/3 of the fuel to go the same distance.
ICE engines have improved a lot in the last 20 plus years, believe it or not.
Yes, I would have hoped so, that's for sure. So yeah, currently happy with my purchase. It's got like an app and stuff that I could set up, which, locks the car remotely. Just cool features and stuff, but honestly, it's a perfectly fine vehicle. No idea whether I'd recommend it. It was just the option that we liked the most. So that's what we got. So that's my car story. Now I've got a new car. Driving that to your place was genuinely much nicer than driving the Mazda. So at least that was good because it's a long drive.
I'm already missing the Mazda.
Yeah, now I have to do the annoying process of selling my old car because trade-in value was awful. So we decided to keep it and sell it on a private market. We'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll just keep it and put it in the backyard somewhere.
It's a paddock bomb.
Yeah, paddock bomb. Yeah, there's a few dents in it and stuff from when my partner hit some rocks in our landscaping. So
what's she doing?
Probably need to get that fixed. But yeah, anyway,
primed for paddock bomb material now.
Yeah, it still runs. I think it's a 2008 model. It's done like 150,000 Ks. So it's still pretty low for that age.
It's very low.
So yeah, it's in reasonable mechanical condition apart from some of that, scratches and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, so I'm now a newer car person. Couldn't tell you much about the specs or anything of the car, but it's a newer Hyundai,
Has
I guess.
4 wheels, still has a steering wheel, which you were relieved to find.
Well, some of the new cars have like a yoke, don't they? So sort of a more rectangular thing. Those seem awful.
Yeah, I mean that's I've not experienced that, but yeah, it's like an F1 steering wheel, I guess. That seems like you're trying way too hard. There's nothing wrong with just the regular old steering wheel. But anyway,
Mm. Yeah, and I've seen a few of those cars these days that have the fully touchscreen controls for everything, like all of your
mm,
climate controls and stuff are all hidden away in menus. At least this Hyundai has still some normal buttons that you can press, so it's sort of easy to
which is way
find the
better.
climate controls. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely way better. Like
yeah.
it's got the touchscreen for the Android navigation and music and stuff, but like normal, regular buttons always in the same position stuff for the other things. So
Yeah, no one wants to be well, I don't want to be operating a massive tablet while I'm trying to drive my car. Just pushing a
mm,
simple button to increase audio or go next track or do whatever, so much better than that. So the infotainment systems. Well, first of all, I don't even use the Mercedes or BMW infotainment. I just use Android because I use Android
yeah,
Auto. And then I
yeah,
don't even navigate through that when I'm driving, really. I just set that up and go. So it's not something you're playing around with while you're driving anyway.
yeah, that's
And
right.
again, like it's got very advanced control of the air conditioning, and I always just use the dial. Like
Yeah, love a dial.
I'm not going into that and like customizing, the climate control in the car while I'm driving it. I'm just like, where's the dial?
Dials are great. That was definitely one of the things we were looking at in sort of the features list was like no overly complicated infotainment system,
Mm-hmm.
which to be fair, on a lot of the Toyota has a fairly basic sort of option and that sort of thing. It's
As long as you
not
got the
all of them have it.
dials,
But
like you say, as long as you got the basic dials, the basic stuff that you had in cars for the last 30 years, you're good to go.
yep.
But
Yeah, absolutely.
the ones that try to do that minimalistic design, it's like, eh.
Yeah, same as the cars that don't have door handles on them. They've got the like hidden ones that you got to push in, and then the door handle sort of like comes out, and you sort of
Yeah, that's
have
been
to use it that way.
banned now. At least I think Europe has banned it for safety concerns because like accessing the car in accidents and stuff, it was causing problems for
Yeah,
responders.
I'm like, there's nothing wrong with a door handle. Like, why do we need to go with this more sleek profile door handle? Like,
Mm,
just give
yeah,
us the normal stuff, guys. There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with it.
yeah. I agree. A door handle's perfectly fine.
That's my story. That's my updates for now. So that'll pretty much do it for this week's episode, I think. Thanks to everyone that sort of sat through our AI discussion and then a few additional bits and pieces here and there. If you're interested in supporting Hardware Unboxed and our podcast and just the general channel, we do have Patreon. You can find that link in the description below. You do get the ad-free supporter version of these episodes. With the supporter feed, the episodes do go up as soon as we're finished making them on YouTube. They are scheduled, so there's a small difference there, but otherwise, the just ad-free might be nice for people. In addition to that, monthly live streams, which we just did, that's a feature that you get. You get our Discord community, all the usual stuff if you like Hardware Unboxed and you've become a Patreon member. So thanks everyone for listening. Last week we didn't do an episode because of timing issues, but I think that we should be pretty okay next week to come back and talk about just general PC hardware, tech stuff, maybe some games, maybe some other stuff. Who knows? Whatever we're testing at the time. So we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.